This is a casual get to know you conversation about the candidates who are running for this district. And then, so the question that I have is who wants to go first? Always a tough question.
I'm sorry, who's going first?
Who wants to go first?
Oh.
Since I'm the newbie,
Come on,
do you want
guys,
me to go?
fess up.
So I'll go. All right, that's perfect.
I think it's, I mean, since they're veterans and I'm the new person, it's probably good that I go first. So I'm Al Howland, a longtime resident of Durham, 24 years. In March, I just came off of serving 10 years on the Oyster River School Board. And I was crazy enough, Kenny Rotner got me to do the double. So I did 6 years on the Durham Town Council as well. I've been very active in committees. I've chaired the Oyster River Finance Committee. I was on the negotiating committee that did all of our collective bargaining contracts. On the municipal side, I chaired the Economic Development Committee and then formed the Durham Housing Task Force, where we're grinding away on zoning, working on what affordable housing really looks like. So I think this is a great opportunity to try something different, to use the things that I've learned from the municipal and school districts. I thought that this District 20 is really cool. I know it's daunting because it's huge, but it gives a real opportunity, I think, for Oyster River and the Dover school systems to work together. And I think that's really, really important as we look about where we're going forward. So that's my long enough introduction.
Thanks. Do you mind taking questions?
No, go ahead, hit me.
Awesome. Eric, do you have any before I start? No, okay. So Al, I have 1,000 questions. Especially because you are the newbie. So I hope this is okay. But my first question is, why did you want to run?
I think a lot of it has been the last 2 years of COVID at the school district level, seeing the disintegration of the state help for local districts. We've been able to weather it, but the challenges are pretty extreme. And I would say that the current setup is openly hostile to local school districts. We've been undermined as there was, the governor's whipsawed us between local control and state control and used it as a weapon against us. And it really is a mechanism to destabilize local school boards and undermine public education. And so I think at the Oyster River Board, we were like, how do we get better representation at the state level? How do we have our voice actually heard? How can we be prepared when we're going to come and speak out against things like divisive concepts? And so I thought, since I was coming to the end of my double term, that this was a really good opportunity to do that.
That's terrific. Thanks for sharing. What is your most proud moment for both the school board and for the town?
The town, I would say the dam removal. It was an incredibly difficult process. It took 4 years of work to do it. But I think, to me, what I've learned in my time of public service is process is everything. Open processes that you try to engage people are really essential, because the science was pretty clear. It's more about how can you get the community to buy into it and move forward. So I think that on the municipal side, that was my big one. I would have to say on the school side, it was the Oyster River Middle School. It was first time passed a $50 million bond on a state-of-the-art building that really cemented the Oyster River legacy. So it took an amazing amount of work to try to squeeze a $50 million project into your budget without spiking your tax rate. It takes a lot of planning. It took 5 years of planning to do it. And I think the results are pretty remarkable.
Cool. What do you hope to accomplish? Oh, you just raised your hand. Do you know that?
I did. Oh no.
Okay.
It's like doing an auto. I'm like, I
you have a question. A question for yourself. So what do you hope to? So I've got 2 questions. What committee do you hope to be on? Like, what are your top three? Because that's what they're going to ask you in November. What are your top three committees you want to be on?
That is a good question. The one that obviously that hits me at the top is education, just because I have a lot of experience there. And then I'm kind of open after that. And I know that sounds non-committal, but I mean, the things I've really worked on hard the last couple of years, and I saw Senator Waters in Dover and talked to it, ironically enough, is solid waste. There is absolutely no way you can meet our future goals without having a regional composting facility. And it sounds so simple, and yet it's insanely hard to do. So that's one of my interests. The other is, and I think there's clearly bipartisan support for it, is housing. I cannot tell you how hard it is to change zoning. Just to grind our way through is going to take 6 months of work, and then another at least 6 months at the planning board. And it's a real challenge. So I think that those are areas that I'd like to work in.
Very cool. Solid waste. I hate to say it, but I'm on board with that, because that's environment and ag, which is my old committee that I chaired. So that's a soft spot for me. So
can I throw in a comment?
Of course, Tom.
I just wanted to say what I did. I got all this advice about the committees, and I just sent them my resume, just describing the things I'd done. And I expected to be on education after 43 years in education. But Steve said, no, he said, you should be on Ways and Means, because you can have influence on the funding for education.
Right.
And that was a wise move, because that year that committee would have driven me mad, whereas Ways and Means was satisfactory. But, depending on the leadership, I would trust them to try to give you a good match.
I don't know if I would have done that with Packard, but yes, Steve, definitely.
Oh, no, the leadership that does your committees is our side.
That's true. That's true. I still don't. Yeah. Any other questions for Al?
I've got a question. May I ask Al one, please?
Of course.
Thank you. Al, Janet Wall speaking here. Has anyone talked with you about county responsibilities yet?
No. I've not.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
know
Well, I know
that
that there are a couple people from Durham, our friends, who don't feel strongly about county work, but everything we do at the county, every state rep has a responsibility to be part of our county government, and that really impacts our taxes directly. And there are a number of different committees at the county level, and we can talk with you about that as time goes by and see what you might be interested in serving on. It's not a huge commitment at all compared to Concord, but it is an important commitment because of our property taxes being directly impacted by what we vote on in the county. So anytime we'll talk with you.
Great, thank you.
Okay? Yeah, and I think you'll find that the county is really a wholesome place to work compared to Concord. You'll find it refreshing because we have a good time. So there. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree totally with what she just said. And we do have a very significant impact on the taxpayers. I'm on the chair of the revenue committee. And I know Janet's very active too. So it is great.
Yeah. And I'm thrilled that you're running. When I heard that you were, I thought this is really a fine choice. You're in the right place at the right time. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you have any questions of the county, both Tom and Janet are great to reach out to, being chairs of committees. They've been there obviously forever. So yeah. Any other questions for Al? No? All right. Well, Eric.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say thank you with respect to the middle school, because my eldest child will be going there beginning next fall. He'll be in 5th grade, and so having that building as opposed to the old building, I'm very appreciative. And also, as not a resident of Durham, I've enjoyed the debate surrounding the dam for the last year or so. So thank you for that as well.
Okay. And Al, I'll say this as well. Thank you, because you will not get enough thank yous in the next 2 years. So just capture them. And when you get a thank you, just hold on to it. So
Well,
thank you.
I don't know if you've ever watched a Durham Town Council meeting, but there's a particular resident that every meeting for 6 years uses 5 minutes of public comments to talk about how incompetent and how stupid we are. So I've had plenty of training dealing with difficult situations.
Not a difficult situation. You don't hear thank you enough. So I'm just going to say thank you. And you can take it for what it is and record this and listen to it whenever you want. And if you're having a down day, just know that the people who voted you in are appreciative of you being there. So
thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here. Tom or Janet, who would like to go next?
I think she wants me to.
Okay, Tom.
But for me, it's sort of a story. Always, I'm thinking, am I going to run again? And when the new redistricting came out, I, went and looked it up, whatever. Well, I couldn't find myself in the new redistricting because they had dissolved my district. And I think of myself as a fairly moderate person. So I thought it was rather unkind to me and to Dover to get rid of Ward 4 as a Dover district. So, again, make lemonade. I looked at the numbers and I looked around and I said, well, we're just going to get someone to run from Lee and someone to run from Madbury and we'll run as a team. And so, I made some calls. Janet was quickly on board because she had been attached more to Durham, but she was certainly open to still represent Madbury. And then we found Roger and Lee. So we've got the three of us as a team. And Peter Schmidt says we're unbeatable, but I know you have to always fight no matter, what the odds are. But I think we're going to be a very good team. We're planning to meet in mid-July once sort of the holidays settle and just have time together to meet each other and then do some planning. And so a couple of my ideas are to do a bulk mailer to Ward 4, Dover, Lee, and Madbury and say, hi, folks, you now have a new District 11 with these 3 places, and this is who we are, and not heavy-handed, but really just giving them the information that we exist and we're this new district, and we're a combination of Lee, Madbury, and Dover. And then also, depending on the flyer, I thought we could have a box for Al to say also there's a new District 20. Again, Al has all of Durham, so in terms of the voting numbers, that will get him over the top. But I think, again, to let him have a box to just say also, we have this District 20. And we've talked a bit about having one sign with all 3 of our names. So right now I'm kind of gathering information from the Secretary of State, how we share the finances on our reports, and the signs, if that's going to be complicated to put 3 names on the sign, and how that works. There's a new requirement that you have to write the address and everything of your fiscal agent. And so I want to know, do we have to all 3 do that? And how much of the sign is that going to take up? Whatever. But I've worked with him before, so I think that'll be fine. And then I'm getting estimates about the flyers. But I think if we do bulk mail to all voters, it's certainly doable. And the Dover Dems have already said there'll be some funding for that. So I feel very positive about it. Again, what was done was unfair. They wanted to make it harder for voters and harder for people doing a campaign. But, the way I look at it, they're still going to end up with a representative from Lee and Madbury and Dover. I've already mentioned to the Dover City Council, and they like the idea that after the election, I'll have Roger, Al, and Janet come to a city council meeting and just, introduce themselves and so on. And then in Dover, being a city, we get emails from the city manager. This bill is important to pass. This one is important to block. So we'll just add their names to the list. And then I would think the same for Lee and, for Madbury, for my end, that if there's something that's strong for them, we'll just share the information. But I think, again, we'll be pretty solid in the way that we vote and the way that we view the world.
Thanks, Tom. Do you want to tell a little bit about your history of, obviously you and I have served together, but they don't know you, right? So what committee are you on? How long
Yeah.
you've been in the House? What are your
Yeah.
passions? Share those things. Talk about you.
So I was an educator for 43 years. And the last 9 years, I was a part-time school administrator in Portsmouth and Rye. And that was when Bill O'Brien was assaulting public education. And so I went and testified, and someone videoed me testifying, of course. And I got a call from David Waters, and he said, "How would you like to sit on the other side of the table?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "How would you like to run and actually make the laws and so on?" So it really was not something in my frame of mind at all. And then now I'm running for my 5th 2-year term. I haven't really enjoyed people that I've met in Concord, like Janet. I feel very good about Stratford County. Really great people to work with in our leadership and everything. And we're one of the strongest counties in the state. And we've initiated a number of things that other counties are copying. So I feel great about that. I'm very proud to be a resident of Dover. I'm pleased with our city council and mayor, the school board, the superintendent, and so on. There are always individual things we disagree on, but overall, I just think Dover is going in a good direction. I was on the visioning committee for the new Dover High School, and they used many of our ideas in the new building. So that was very exciting. And we were able to get, an 87 million brand new high school passed. So all those are things that I feel good about. In Concord, my list probably would be things I'm glad I helped block. But, we did it. There are some pretty bad things that we blocked. And my mom is at risk, so I had to miss a fair amount because of COVID. And I really should have been allowed to participate on Zoom, because my committee did Zoom for one whole term with no problems whatsoever. And then they just voted no more Zoom. So, that really, again, was an unfair decision. And so my attendance record is not great for some of that period, because my mom's more important than foolish partisan stuff. Again, I think I like the teamwork on my committee at different times. I've been kind of a mentor for brand new members, but the new members we got last time were very strong. As Amanda knows, Mary and Murph were, they came on so strong, we really didn't need anyone to say anything to them. But the key for all of us is we have to take back the House, because that means we control who chairs the committees. It means we will have a seat at the table for the budget, and so on and so forth. And we've just got to reduce the number of free staters, because otherwise, the person who wants to be speaker, I know it's being tape recorded, so I'll only say that would not be good. And I'm pleased that Lee is doing this. I'm impressed you do the monthly meetings. And I think, again, it will be a way to keep all the communication going. And Amanda, we will miss you.
Yeah. Not an easy decision. As you know, COVID changed everything. So, and I will say thank you for your comments about Lee Dems. We're definitely not as organized or on top of it as the Dover Dems, but we do our job. We do the best we can. So, but thank you for those kind words. And I hope that moving forward, obviously, you all are frequent guests of these meetings. So, any questions for Tom? Jan.
Yeah, Tom, what's your sense if the Dems are able to retake a majority in the House? Do you think they'll re-enable participation by Zoom, whether it be just for committee meetings or for both committee and the general meetings as well?
That's a very interesting question. I don't see why not. It was very interesting that the Senate, the other side of the wall, had 2 members that were ill, and they let them do Zoom. So to me, I don't have a big problem with that. We had a couple members that already had a plan for how you would do that in the House to be able to count their votes. Certainly, I think you should be able to Zoom at committee meetings. And I do realize it's a little harder when you're doing a quick vote in the House. But I would certainly consider it. And again, if we win the House, it will be our call. I suspect that we will not have guns in the House if we do get the House back. And again, it at least gives us a seat at the table for the budget. And last time when we were in charge, even though we didn't have everything, we actually got the governor to add over 100 million to public education that year, just because he had other priorities. And as long as we went along with a couple of those, he let us do the education funding. He did go around with the checks and hand them out for that funding, even though it wasn't in his budget. But again, at least gives us a seat at the table. And of course, for redistricting, we did not have a seat. And for this year's budget, we did not. I will say, for the people that don't know, this year's budget was an absolute disaster. With the Republicans controlling the governor, the Senate, and the House, they really thought they're going to have this great budget and everything's going to go fine. And what happened is some of the members of especially the House said, we're not going to vote for the budget unless you make some changes. And that's how all these awful things got added in, like critical race theory, all the Planned Parenthood issues, the horrible voucher program. All of that stuff was added in because they didn't have enough votes. It wasn't even stuff that was necessarily going to pass, and it all got just put in. And it also meant there were no hearings on any of those things. And their early voucher plans, the hearings had just been swamped with people from all around the state who didn't want vouchers. But by sliding it into HB2, which is the back of the budget, they were able to bypass hearings. So again, if we, have a majority, that's not going to happen next time. And thank you to Jan, because Dover and then in the bigger picture, Stratford County did really well with filings. Almost too well. We have some extra primaries, but
That's much better than the alternative.
Yes, exactly. And they didn't even run people in certain areas. So.
Any other questions for Tom? Yes, Eric.
My question, I just want to ask if the change in the level of COVID has increased your ability to attend, or are you still feel like you need to be Zooming most of the time?
No, what I started doing, again, my mom is in assisted living, but it's under the umbrella of Dartmouth Health Center. So the rules are quite strict. So what I started doing was I would go to the House session, wait 2 days, and then test myself before I saw my mom. So I was able to work it out eventually. But we had some major problems. There were people in the House with COVID, and we weren't told about it. That happened several times. And again, it was very irresponsible, the way it was handled. And you would look at the House, and there might just be one mask on their side. And then most of our side was masks. And so it just, I'll never understand really why masks became so political. But especially going back a year or so, they weren't being safe at all. And so that really, it was really a problem. I mean, some of our leaders couldn't go at all because they were vulnerable. Again, I think they could have accommodated those 8 or 10 people that were really at risk by doing some kind of Zoom or something. But my sense was they didn't want them there. But I think we are going to have flus going up and down. And I think it's just, I think sometimes people may choose to wear masks again. But now with most people on our side being vaccinated, I think that makes a big difference too. But time will tell. And I do feel badly for some of the anti-masking and anti-vax bills that did make it through. Because again, I don't think they're fair to the average person.
I'll just throw in, it's kind of infuriating when the governor this past February, over our February break, said, okay, no longer do you require masks. And he blew up the ability of local districts. Then we had all established matrices of transmission and hospitalization and case counts. And so by using that, we had the ability to, as we moved into a better situation, to not mask. But if we moved in the opposite direction, we could mask. And by doing it the way they did that, they took away the ability of local districts to do that. It was really stupid.
Agreed. And Dover was in the same situation. Dover had a really fair system, even though every school board meeting, some people would come and attack it. But when you stood back and looked at the system, it was sensible.
All right. Well, thank you, Tom, for being here and serving and doing what you do. We all appreciate it. So thank you. Janet, you're up. And when you talk, I'm gonna put a picture of you up.
Oh, that's really a shame. That's too bad. I didn't want to be seen. Hi, everybody. I'm Janet Wall, and I'm thrilled to be running again. And Tom, thanks for your kind remarks a few minutes ago. I really am looking forward to working directly with you and everybody else in our new district. And I need to reassure the people from Dover, don't be afraid. We can work together. We will work together. And Dover will not be watered down, which is what I read in Foster's. Your representation will not. In fact, I think it's going to be enhanced. Years ago, during one of the redistricting dilemmas, I got redistricted into Durham, Lee, Madbury, and Barrington. And Barrington's as huge as Durham, Lee, and Madbury all put together. And boy, was that a challenge. So I learned how to handle a big district. So having Ward 4 in Dover, yeah, it's big. It's over 5,800 people. That is pretty big combined with Lee and Madbury. And Madbury, I think, is the smallest town in the county. But we're going to work it out, and it's going to be fine. I still have energy, still willing to do all of this. I've served on a number of committees before, and I am known as a moderate. I'm known as a negotiator, and I'm known for working on both sides of the aisle and getting things done. Part of that may be why I'm on ethics and have been for a while. I've been the vice chairman of ethics, and I'm currently the ranking member on the committee. We have ethics legislation I'll be working on to bring forward to update and better refine what we're doing with ethics at this time. One of the big issues we have is that people don't know when they should recuse from voting on bills. And we have defined what that means, but we're going to further define it so that we're hoping that if you have a household member, it doesn't have to be someone you're married to or son or daughter or aunt or uncle or whatever. Just if someone's in your household and has a particular financial interest that is more than any other average person in the legislature would have, then you would need to recuse from a vote. This is something that's been called to our attention. We've needed to refine for several years now, so I'll be working on that. Lately, I've been on legislative administration. That has to do with accountability of the Secretary of State's office and everything else in the House, including the clerk's office. It has to do with how the whole House is run. And yes, our committee is one of the ones that had to deal with some of the COVID pandemic issues. Other committees, Health and Human Services, and I forget one other, were working on that as well. So I'm guessing I'll probably be put back on ledge administration. I don't know. My first committee was education. Now, it's a whole lot different now from it was when I was on it, and I'm wishing you all the luck in the world, and you're bringing tremendous expertise to the House. I'm really looking forward to you serving on the committee. One of the big issues when I served on it was school building aid, and it's still an issue with some communities. At the time I went on it was because of school building aid, and I helped out the Oyster River School District with that. But that's not where my heart was. My mind was, my skills were, I had been a teacher, but my heart was elsewhere. Second term, I was on resources, which I loved, and I was well qualified. And actually, the chairman said I was the most qualified of the committee, which stunned me. But I worked on a number of issues there. I made sure that Portsmouth got their first harbor management plan. I mean, with all the ships coming and going and the recreational boats, there was never a harbor management plan down there. I worked on designating several rivers as wild and scenic, worked on public access to water, the reclamation of gravel pits, which is a big deal, a whole bunch of issues on that. And again, I loved it, but my heart was still elsewhere. And finally, I went where I really wanted to go, but I had fulfilled the promises I had for education and resources, and I'll always work on those types of issues. But I finally went to what I was aiming for, and that was judiciary. And I served on that for a number of years and really enjoyed it. Was ranking member for a long, long time on it, and was also vice chairman, asked to step aside and let someone else be chair, which I did do because that person really desperately wanted to be chairman. Also, while I worked on that, we dealt with a lot of critical issues. While I was on it, I helped design the living will and durable powers of attorney that we're all familiar with now. Worked on access to the courts, better access, easier access, which was a problem. Worked on the impeachment of the Supreme Court justice. It was really, really an agonizing time to be on the committee at that time because of what had happened in our Supreme Court, which had been so revered. And I was the lead prosecutor who took that into the Senate. And it was a whole summer, an entire summer, 5 days a week that we spent working on that particular issue. And out of that, one thing we were able to finally get was a retirement plan for judges. There never had been one. Most people, most companies, even the lawyers have retirement plans, but the judges did not. So we've devised ways for judges who had problems with health or otherwise to retire and being appropriately compensated. After I stepped away from that, I was asked a couple of years later to be on the Judicial Retirement Board, which I was able to do without feeling any conflict of interest. Worked on landlord-tenant issues, which can be an issue in Dover, I know, just as the natural resources are. And by the way, I want to mention on natural resources, Dover's got some real serious water concerns. You had the Griffin water well, that had to have filtration systems put on it a few times and finally was shut down, contaminated by Madbury metals. So Dover has had that problem, and now Dover and Madbury are both deeply concerned about Barbados Pond and the water level there dropping, as well as the water in the reservoir in Madbury, the water which goes entirely to Portsmouth, who then sells it to surrounding communities as well as their own residents. Now we're all becoming much more concerned about water resources and where do we go when we need water, more water in Dover, more water in Madbury. That's going to be an issue. Lee's pretty safe right now for water, but I hope we don't have to worry about that anytime soon. Administrative rules. I was asked by our leadership to serve on that one day. And 14 years later, I said, come on, folks. I did my afternoon duty. It's time for someone else. Administrative rules is a really, really important committee, and most people know nothing about it. Every bill that we file practically, every bill that affects any one of the 110 to 112 state agencies and departments, those change from time to time, so the numbers change, has to implement rules to make it so that our laws work. So if we have a rule that goes to, say, the Department of Environmental Services or to the Education Department, those departments have to implement their own rules to make the law work. And there's a committee, a joint committee of House members and senators who work on that. It's fascinating. It can be tough at times. It's improved in terms of the length of time and the processes it used. We used to go in on Fridays at 9 and get out at 6 or 7 at night. They might bring in pizza for lunch if we were lucky. It's a whole lot different now, but at the same time, it's a very important committee, and I personally feel every legislator should be exposed to it at some point in time so that the realization is there when we bills that there are responsibilities, not just with the laws, but how those laws are implemented. What else can I talk about? Some of the things I did accomplish. One thing I'm thrilled about right now, I actually am pleased that our governor vetoed one particular bill. He vetoed the bill that was going to repeal the buffer zones around abortion clinics. And when I was on judiciary, abortion's one of the issues we dealt with, as well as the life and death issues, the landlord-tenant issues, and limited liability and such. But Planned Parenthood brought a bill before us because there was such a problem with people harassing clients and patients going into places, not just for, well, I'll say reproductive health facilities, and whether they were going for abortions or not, people were being harassed, and that was wrong. Planned Parenthood had a bill that they put in, and the wording was so awkward, it was very clear that even we as Democrats could not support it. It was going to go down. And I drafted an amendment because I've been on Stratford Regional Planning Commission. I was on it for 26, 27 years, and on a zoning board, and I had a sense of what I could do to help protect these clinics. And I will say that even our own party said to me, don't put your amendment in, you're going to ruin it. And I said, have I ever ruined anything up here? They didn't trust me until they saw the bill was going to die. And I put in the bill with very simple wording based on our regional planning that works throughout the state for a 25-foot buffer zone. And the governor has vetoed that repeal, and I am thrilled about that. So we're keeping our 25-foot buffer zones. I will say for Lee, not only have I worked on natural resources for Lee and other issues, I also worked on getting Lee's zip code for you. Lee wanted a post office. I worked like mad to do it and couldn't get the federal postal system to agree to that, but was able to get your zip code out in Lee. I call Lee my home away from home. I do a lot of volunteer work with the museum and the Historical Society out there. You'll be seeing me this Saturday. I was there Saturday again, last Saturday. Again, it's my home away from home. So Lee and Dover mean a great deal to me, just as Durham. I'm going to really, really miss Durham. But at the same time, I will never forget, and I will always do for Durham when they need help. I am known, as I said, for my abilities to negotiate and work across the aisle. I am moderate. I'm really looking forward to working together with all the new reps who are coming in and to continuing the work that I have been doing. And again, I'll be working on natural resources. I put in the legislation that made it so hospitals like Wentworth Douglas and Mass General could coordinate their services and blend and merge their care to help contain costs, if not reduce them. And it was a senator who tried to copy my own bill, took it word for word and put his name on it, and tried to bump that out of the ballpark. And that was really one of the things that can happen in Concord. There's a warning for anyone new coming in. So watch if you file legislation. Make sure someone doesn't try to capture your own wording and put their name on it, because that's not the right thing to do, and that's happened a few times. What else can I offer? There's a lot of unfinished business. I worked for years to get passenger rail service in, and we're trying to expand that. And you've read about that in the papers. Bring it up from Massachusetts to Nashua or Manchester. Eventually, I'd like to get it to Concord, but we're having some real snags regarding that, and they're the same old story, but we're going to keep working on it. And one bill that I have worked on before and will work on again, our gas taxes help pay for our roads and highways to be tarred and improved, and culverts and bridges, as well as the surfaces of the roads. Now with electric cars not having to pay the gas tax, we're seeing a reduction in what we have for our receipts coming in for the taxes, for the gas tax. And we've got to find a way to resolve that, because more and more we're all moving to electric cars, electric trucks. And we have to come to some conclusion on that. I've been working on that for several years, and we haven't come to a consensus yet. So I want to continue that. So I'll be working on a whole number of things with infrastructure, with healthcare, mental health for police officers, for young people, for people in general, not just because of COVID, but because the economy is bad and we're seeing that there's a real crisis in this country regarding the availability of mental health workers and the access to mental health care. So I'm working on a whole bunch of things. I'm really, really looking forward to it. And I hope I don't put you to sleep on this, but I just find what I'm doing in Concord very exciting, very worthwhile. It is frustrating dealing with the current leadership. I agree with Tom in terms of what's happened during COVID. I'm expecting that and I think the Democrats may take over the House. Right now, as I understand, the Democrats were able to fill 390 slots of the 400 available. That's more than the Republicans were able to do, and we have far more money in our coffers than Republicans do right now. So keeping our fingers crossed that we might take the House back this time. If we do, I'm looking to have probably hybrid meetings for our committees as we were sort of edging towards the end of our sessions this year. One problem with hybrid meetings, Zoom meetings exclusively, is that the public, as much as I want the public and we need the public to be involved, there would be what we call the blue sheets for them to sign in, whether they're for or bill or against it, and these would be handed out with all the names on it, pro or con, prior to the hearings, before the people in the public or even the committee members even had the chance to hear testimony. And I only think it's fair that testimony be heard before people sign on, whether they're for or against, unless it's someone who's very, very familiar with the subject matter. So we need to find a way to resolve that, have public access, but also have public knowledge of what's really happening. So those are some of the things I've done, some of the things I want to work on, and my big thing is I want to reassure Dover you will not have watered-down representation. I want to assure everybody that we folks running for Lee, Mabry, and Dover are going to do just fine. So thank you for listening. Are you all awake still?
Thank you, Janet. Eric, what is your question?
Excuse me?
Okay, so this is Eric Johnson. I have two things for you. The first is I just want to let you know, because you're calling in, that I changed my background to your picture, so now everybody knows what you look like. And the second thing is with respect to the gas tax, other than raising it, what other potential solution is there?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
With
What other
respect to
solution?
with respect to the gas tax, other than raising it, what solution could there be?
Oh, I don't want to raise the gas tax. I really, really do not want to raise the gas tax. No, one of the things we're trying to come to a consensus on, and we don't know how to do it, but we're watching other states as well. And one of the things may be to have a slight fee attached, not a big fee, just a couple or $5 or something, to the registrations of electric cars, just to help that, because there has to be some way to pay for the bridges, the culverts, the roadways in the state, and right now the gas tax is what's doing it. So we don't know exactly how to do it. I'm not a person who likes to tax and fee, but at the same time, the people with electric cars, even though they're paying more for electric cars, and they make that point, and I respect that, need to understand that their vehicles are also causing wear and tear on the roads. So I'm open to whatever ideas there are. So far, what we've learned from other states, at least, is that they're working on a fee for registration, but I don't know. I just don't know what the true answer will be, what the reasonable answer is going to be. And I'm totally open to ideas from people. And that's not one of my bigger issues, but it is an issue that's out there and one that I've been aware of.
Eric, there's been talk as well. Peter Somschutz, like this is his issue. He's a rep from Portsmouth. This is his passion. He has talked about doing it by weight and adding basically an excise tax like Massachusetts. And so those are one of the ideas that are being thrown around as well. So, Al, your hand is up. You have a question?
No, I don't know. My hand keeps spontaneously raising. I don't know. I have an iPad. I'm not quite sure why it does it. Sorry.
That's okay. You're just super excited. Um, that's awesome. Well, does anyone have any questions for Janet? She,
Janice
I will
talked
just
a lot.
I'll just make a pitch that if anyone has any questions when they get into the house or even before the house, like Janet's the person to go to. She is an institution. I was lucky enough to share an office with her, but other than that, like if you have any questions, obviously and even the county. Oh my gosh, Janet does so much work with the county. So definitely reach out to her with any questions or thoughts, or she knows what could probably pass and what couldn't, and who to work with if you want to get something through. So thank you, Janet, for running and for being here today.
Oh, may I add one other thing about the county? We, as I've said before, we're really, really lucky to have the people we have working together at the county. And one of the things that you are aware of is that we're planning a new rest home. And I've been asked to work on that. I'm going to ask that it be like the Oyster River school system. You in Dover may not know about this, but the new middle school in Durham is super. It's all green practically. It has geothermal heating. It has solar panels for the electricity, more than they'll be able to use, and lots of windows for light. I want our nursing home to be similar to that, so I'm promoting that when we meet in August. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Jan, I'm going to throw you on the spot for a second. Do you want to talk about the county, the Democratic county, the committee? Do you want to talk about anything about recruiting people or doing anything afterwards? Because I want to segue into that after, if you want to say anything.
I don't have lots to say. I'm happy to have some internal party discussion in a non-public way later on, but the Dover Dems are working now. We're kind of ramping up. I recently sent out a survey to all of our candidates about setting up meeting times. We'll be having regular meetings to support any candidate who's running for any piece of Dover. So that'll obviously include Al and Janet and Roger as well. There will be, as Tom alluded to, there will be some financial support coming from the Dover Dems. Our fundraising has been going pretty well. The candidate recruitment committee in Dover is we're going to wordsmith up some kind of formula for how to allocate that funding. We're going to try and balance a combination of equity and nature of competitive races in that formulation, because we have, not only do we have a lot of candidates, but we have some candidates that are running in a single ward, some candidates that are running for 5 wards in Dover, some candidates that are running for a ward in Dover, but then in part for other towns. Some of them will have competitive races in the general, and some of them will not. So we want to take all of that into account. So we'll come up with a formulation for that. And it's not going to be millions of dollars a candidate, but hopefully it'll be enough to at least put a little bit of a dent to it, and for candidates, particularly first-time candidates who have to buy a lot of signs. Looking at you, Al. So I won't speak too much to the county as a whole, since Walter's really spearheading the effort on that. So I kind of put on my blinders and try and focus mostly in the Dover arena.
Awesome.
Can
Well,
I
thank
just
you.
add something to that, please? I will tell you, I'm scared to death. I run scared. And even though I've had a big district before, when I had Durham, Lee, Madbury, and Barrington, that was a while ago, and I've just had Lee, I have not had Lee for a while now. I've had Durham and Madbury, and I'm really getting nervous about how to get known in Dover. It's going to take an awful lot of work and communication to be able to be a viable candidate in Dover. I am worried about that. Any reassurance, please?
I would just say, like,
I can. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Al.
I was just going to say that I think, Tom alluded to it earlier. I think that the four of us have strengths that overlap and will help each other. I mean, obviously Tom is very well known in Dover, and you're extremely well known in Madbury and Lee. And I also have a pretty strong presence in Madbury and Lee, just having been on the Oyster River School Board. So I think, the reassuring thing I'll try to say is that there is a real strength in working together.
Yeah, we must work together. And quite honestly, I'm not well known in Lee anymore. It's been 10 years since I had Lee, and most of the people I know have moved, have died. And I need to get known in Lee. I mean, I do volunteer at the museum, but that's not a big thing. So in Dover, I used to be known in Dover when we had Foster's. And Gary Reno and Foster's would write up what we did. And oh my goodness, that was such a benefit for all of us in the whole Seacoast area. But that's gone. So that's why I'm running scared. Thank you. And yes,
Yeah.
I'm willing to work with you and run with you. And we do need to run as a team. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll also offer the assurances, Janet, from a Dover Democrats organizational perspective, that I don't think there's any reason to be scared or stressed right now. You're in the fortunate circumstance you don't have a primary, so you have an ample window of time leading into the general. For you personally, you have 3 seats, and we have 3 great Democrats running for them, and there's only one GOP candidate in opposition. We haven't assembled our competitive intelligence yet on them, but you may or may not know him. Between a combination of the demographics and our organizational work, we'll get you familiar with Dover Ward 4. Great people like Tom will get you connected, and others. We've got a healthy network, and we have strong support from activists within both the public school community as well as at a town level in Dover that'll be able to help you out and be happy to do so.
Am I on? Yeah. I do math on rainy days, and I know there are different formulas. Walter did a slightly different one than I did. But my formula for District 11 shows us at plus 2,000. So, I think not to be overconfident, but I think we're in good shape. And we don't know much about this one person running from Lee. But again, even if all Republicans vote for that person, we still have quite a head up over them.
Oh, that's good to know. Yeah, I've never heard of the person from Lee before. Amanda, have you?
And Roger hadn't either. It's Lehman, Lehman.
Yeah, I've never heard of him before.
I don't think Jeff Salloway knew him either. So that's probably a good sign. But I'll have more, Janet. I mean, I have things I haven't sent you yet. For example, I have a master list of all of the voters in Ward 4.
Oh, wow.
And I already have it. I just haven't sent it to you because I knew the dust was settling. But I'm sure once you have a chance to look at that list, you're going to find a number of people in Ward 4.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Again, Madbury's the smallest town in the county, so it may sound like a big deal that I've been a state rep for a while, but it's still a puny little town. By the way, folks, I asked if we could meet at the Madbury Town Hall at some time because it's midway between Lee and Dover, and they said as long as we don't call ourselves the Democrats, as long as we say we're candidates, they'll let us use the Madbury Town Hall. And if you're willing to do that, I'm willing to. Just putting it out there for the future.
Yeah, I think we do need to rotate as time goes along. So that might be a good spot for our July meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
So with that, I can't say it was quite a segue, but Tom, you mentioned this as well. So we do not meet for the next 2 months. Yay for me, since I'm the one who plans these monthly meetings. I get a little break and I appreciate that. And it's just because everybody goes on vacation. So it's hard to get everyone's attention during the summer. So we don't meet again until September, which is why I wanted to have you all today, because I want to be able to support you moving forward, even if we are not meeting collectively as the Lee Dems. So with that said, September and October, I want to try something a little bit different that we haven't done in the past couple of years. And I think it's just because Jeff and I aren't running, so let's try something new. But if you need support, like if you need someone to write out postcard addresses, if you need whatever you might need, can you let me know ahead of time?
Yeah.
Because what I would love to do is tell my group, my team, like, hey, instead of meeting for an hour, why don't you fill out postcards for an hour? Let's
Yeah.
get together on Zoom. We'll have our wine. We'll have a conversation while we write out postcards or something like that. So it's a little bit more interactive. So if you all have needs or something that someone can physically do beyond obviously the canvassing and the sign holding, definitely let me know. I will also say when it comes to canvassing and sign holding, again, let me know. I will throw it out to the group. I will say canvassing is hard for the Lee Dems to do just because there's not a lot of us and we're extremely busy, as everybody is, right? So I know of a couple of people who love canvassing. That's their thing. So let me know and I'll reach out to them. And then sign holding, we all do. I don't know why, but it's one of our favorite things to do, even when it's so stinking cold out in November and it's freezing or it's raining or it's snowing, we're still there. And I don't know why, but we are. We build our own totems. So give me your signs. And then, or if you're having a totem party, let me know, which is probably not, they're not called that anymore, but whatever. I've got wood and staple guns and all of that stuff. So we're happy to help out however we can with that as well. And obviously stand in front of the Lee polls for you all. I'll just
And that
offer
sounds
that as-
great. I think when again, we need to get to know each other, Roger and Janet. Janet and I know each other, but we're learning more every day. So I think it would make sense after we have met once or twice. I can send a summary to Jan and to you, so you just have an idea. But again, where we're going to start, I believe, is we really want a neat flyer that will bulk mail to everybody, and in the fall, of course. And then we want to see if we can create a good 3-person sign that we won't buy 100 of them, but we'll buy some and give some to each community. So I'd say those are our 2 starting points. But like you said, sometimes even with the flyer, if you have volunteers, they can write before we do this bulk mail flyer, thank you, or just a little personal note on it. We'll just have to see, what's practical.
Exactly. I mean, Janet would be the expert in flow-terals, but I also ran for the last 6 years, 7 years of flow-terral for both Lee and Barrington.
Yeah.
And as Janet mentioned, Barrington is huge.
Yeah.
We also had signs that.
How did you do it? Amanda, how did you do it?
Oh my gosh, definitely relying on volunteers and the Barrington Dems because I am not super familiar with Barrington. Lee obviously is my home spot. And so Lee I had. Barrington was a lot of volunteers, a lot of help with people. I mean, I don't have cell phone service for half of Barrington. So it was somebody driving me around and telling me to get out and this person lives at this house and this is what they're interested in. So definitely find contacts like that. A lot of signs. So Jan, I was going to say, I love your formula. They really do.
Amanda, how did you ever figure out what the boundaries of Barrington were when you were driving along? That's a tough town because it's so huge. Congratulations for winning as much as you did. You did a super job. And yeah, you're right. Lee and Barrington, tough combination.
It was, but I loved it. So I was sad when they changed the district. You make such progress and then things change. And but same with you, right? You having 5 or 6 towns as a district. So Jan, I was going to say your formula, I think it's great. But the people who do have bigger districts have to buy more signs. I often said to the Barrington Dems because they had 2.5 reps, right? So I was the half. And their 2 only had to be in Barrington. And I had to say to everybody, it's double signs, double mailings, double palm cards. My time unfortunately doesn't double as well. Like I wish it did. So I needed more volunteers. So I would say keep that in mind when you're doing your calculation, which of course you already know. The more towns you have, especially if you have to spread out over far districts or far areas within that, with those towns. Like I think I bought 100 signs. That's really actually not even enough for Barrington. So yeah,
Wow.
just keep that in mind. I would say with Tom, we did do a sign with 3 names on it. It looked phenomenal. It was blue and white. It caught your attention. We had them like up and down 125. So it really it was amazing. So I would definitely recommend that, having all 3. It's that name recognition. So
Yes.
I'm happy to send you the design that we use, but it
Oh,
was really
yes, if you
simple.
don't mind, you have my email,
Yeah.
yahoo.com. Also, what I learned, District 11 is not Flotario. It's considered a real district with Lee, Madbury, and Dover because it has 3 reps. But Al's is a Flotario. And the hard one in Dover is a Flotario. It was so strange when we had the meeting with Senator Waters.
I know.
Everyone
I would
said-
still treat it as a Flotaro, but yeah, I completely agree with you.
But I think Marge Smith corrected me. But anyway, when we met with Senator Waters, everyone kept saying, I'm going to represent all the wards except Ward 4.
Too bad.
I can't use my signs anymore because first off, they're worn out, and secondly, my signs date back to before we had red and blue states. And Foster's did this thing once saying my signs were the most visible, and that's what helped me get elected, they claimed. That was a long time ago. My signs are red with white letters. I can't use those anymore. I'm not a Republican. I only used them for the color back when. So I'm at ground zero when it comes to signs.
My regret is that I didn't have a sign that I could just change the bottom of what I was running for. Because I've had school board, and I had a lot for school board.
Oh, wow.
I had town council, which I also ran for. So I've done multiple. I would also say that, I'm not a big fan of social media, but that Lee Durham Madbury Facebook page is a big, a lot of people read it. It was really active in the school board. It doesn't cost any money to put stuff on there. So while signs are good, and I agree with that, having done a million of them for the dam, it's a more, as I say, Tom's idea of the direct mailing is really, really good. I can remember when I first ran for school board, we're too cheap to do direct mailing. So we just photocopied stuff, and I went around and put them on mailboxes on the outside of the flag.
Oh, be careful of that, Al. Be careful.
That's
Some woman
legal.
in Durham last time I ran had a fit because I taped my flyer to the post for her mailbox, and she complained to the post office about me.
Really?
I've always gone door to door until last time, and I dared to put it on her. Oh, she was nasty. So beware in Durham. Be careful.
Well, it actually was Durham that I did it, along with other people. Yeah, when we ran, it was a really contentious. It was a contested election and very, very contentious, and there wasn't a problem.
And strictly speaking, Janet's right, though. Basically the mailbox and the mail polls are verboten territory, and just steer clear. Don't play tricks like hanging them on the flags or putting little bags on the flags or any of that kind of stuff.
A mailer is a lot easier, honestly. It's like, imagine driving around Lee doing that. But I did it in Durham. It's extraordinarily time consuming. A more targeted approach is so much smarter.
Yeah, and we can, and it sounds like Tom may already be on this, but in the context of the Dover Dems and working with the NHDP, we can generate a combination of targeted lists both for walking canvassing, and the NHDP has a capacity. They've got a basically here are the likely voters who we think will respond positively to you as a candidate, putting your butt on their doorstep and talking to them. And so that's more highly targeted versus the ones that we're just going to send an army of college students out with flyers and have them descend like locusts in the neighborhood and plaster everything with paper. And that's good enough. And so each of those are kind of their own lists and universes, and we'll work to structure that and provide that for you guys if you want to use it. And if you're like, I care nothing for that, Jan, take it away. That's fine too. It doesn't hurt my feelings.
One thing I think would be kind of important to come up with something a little creative this time for all the candidates on paper together. If it's like newspaper, people throw it away. They don't read it. They learned that from the past and from what the county has done, sending out something for all of us, for the whole county. People don't pay attention to that. I think if we get together and come with something a little creative, maybe on, I hate to put it this way because it costs more, colored paper perhaps or something, it may catch people's attention. They might at least look at it and catch the faces and names before they throw it out. I want to believe that Dover's a little more serious from what I'm hearing about candidates. Dover takes it seriously, which I find wonderful. So just a thought.
And no, whether or not it's black and white versus color, kind of in part a financial discussion, right? But I think your thoughts spot on, Janet.
Yeah, the one I'm getting for us initially is it would be color. I'm just getting the estimated cost. And then we can work from there. And it also signs, if they only have 2 colors, they're less than 3 colors. I more want to go for quality and maybe not quantity, and that if we have great signs and put them in the right places, that might be better than cheap signs.
Yeah.
I was
Are you
gonna
working with Michelle on that, Tom? Are you working with Michelle on that?
We can't.
Yes,
Michelle. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Michelle is doing estimates on a bunch of things for me.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the location is more important than the number, getting really prime locations and knowing. So that's one thing we'll need from Lee is like, where would you put the signs, permission from people to put the signs. They're pretty stickler about putting signs in public places in Durham, that's for sure. So.
Ditto in Dover.
Eric, you have your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to mention, as someone who ran for state rep years ago with other people in the district, we had signs with all 3 of our names on it, which was great at the time. I think the only potential issue is that as soon as the 3 of you are not running again, signs become worthless. For example, I moved out of the district and one of my other running mates died. So that was the first and last time that we used those signs.
Yeah.
I still have one in the shed.
Yeah, thank you for reminding. I'm starting with the idea of 50 signs, and kind of will go from there. But I think people do change, and also the fact that we really don't have a significant opponent, it doesn't really make sense to go way overboard on expensive signs. It might even be better, once I get the figures, to do 2 flyers or send them out 2 different times rather than spend a whole lot on signs. Although I appreciate that Lee loves signs.
Yeah. I was going to say, Dover Ward 4 is concentrated in population. This is just off the top of my head. Dover has concentrated population, so it'll be interesting to figure out how to put the signs. But Lee has a population that's more spread out geographically. So people will be coming from a number of directions to vote at that time. So how do we catch the attention of those people who are living further away from the center of town? Amanda, how did you do it?
The more difficult part about
signs?
Yeah, you do it on the popular intersections, but the hard part about Lee lately is that people cut through from Epping and other surrounding areas to get to Dover. So 155, which traditionally no one used, I mean, not many, and the traffic has increased, but for the wrong population for a campaign. Because if you're living in Epping and working in Dover, we can't use you. In that traditional sense. So it is much more difficult. We used to do a lot of standing out by Mast Way, and waving at people, but yet they're all commuters. So you still just find the more popular spots, the ones that have the most traffic, and then people's yards
So you
on
know
the
people
side
along
streets.
those ways then? Do you know people who
Of
will
course.
allow signs along those ways
Oh yeah,
who can
yep,
help us?
definitely. Yep.
Beautiful.
Oh yeah, no worries. No,
I
yeah.
would,
Um,
I would keep in mind that everybody in Lee goes to a couple of different places all the time, such as Market Basket, the transfer station, stuff like that. And so as long as you have adequate signage there, arguably, you don't need it in a whole bunch of other places.
no, Market Basket, you're not allowed to.
Well, I mean, not
How-
Market Basket specifically, but in that general vicinity, everybody
The circle.
shops there pretty much.
Yeah, the circle you can do, but you can't do their property. So you can't even do at the traffic lights.
And so then how
yeah.
in Dover with the concentration of population, how do you do it in Ward? How do you do signs
I
there?
think, again, there are people like Jan and so on that have spots where they put signs. I kind of surprised myself. The Shaheens have an area that's very good for signs. They're not in my ward, but they always let me put a couple signs there. And so everyone saw my name. And also, like Amanda, we would have people in downtown Dover holding all the Dover signs. And again, it was more awareness of the names. I have a close colleague who lives next door to Dover High School who lets me put up 2 very visible signs there. So every single person going to high school sees my sign. So there are things like that, Janet, that I think,
Well, didn't you say you work at the polls also? You check
yes,
on the
I am
voters or
a
something?
selectman, and on election day, I am Switzerland. And that's always worked fine because there are other people that are glad to hold totems. But I don't do any campaigning at all the day before or the day of elections, but I'm more needed inside. So that's never been a problem. If you're
Boy, you got this
selectman,
down to a science.
well, it was partly self-defense, but but as a selectman, if everyone doesn't know, you just can't touch completed ballots. So I tend to do the grand list for most of the day or be a greeter. But even that, I think, is close to the line. So, when people are coming to vote and I'm checking their name off, they can barely even see my name tag. And someone might say hi to me, but I'm really a different person. And it really hasn't been an issue. There is a new law that I can't be on the side of the rope when votes are counted. But in Dover, the only votes that are counted are the write-ins. So that's not a big deal. So I've already been in touch with Scanlon and with my city clerk, and they said, not to be concerned. So.
One of the problems we have in Madbury, it depends on who's the moderator at the time, they haven't been very friendly towards us as candidates. And to tell you the truth, I have hardly ever stood at the polls in Madbury because we haven't been welcome. And it's not a good feeling. And I'm a selectman in Madbury, and they don't even want me in the town hall that day. I mean, I can go in to vote, and they don't want me there otherwise. And I'm thinking, okay, well, it's the smallest town in the county, so I guess maybe it doesn't count. But every vote does count. So I don't know I'll have to check with the current moderator in Madbury and see what we're allowed to do out here.
Yeah, and
we must have some signs.
We can chat at our, summer meeting because I think
Sure.
Roger is
We'll
familiar
figure
with
it
that
out,
too.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. Clearly, you have not been treated correctly because I know the manual almost backwards and forwards, but that's not
I know you do.
That's not something we can really do right now. And again, the goal is for you to win, Janet. And so whatever they try to do, you're going to win. So
we're all going to win. So, yeah, we're very lucky that the Democrats are so committed to being Democrats and not wishy-washy. When I've run before, it's been 1/3 Republicans, 1/3 Democrats, 1/3 undeclared. But I don't know how it's going to work this time. I'm told Dover's very Democratic, which is so refreshing. And so we'll see what happens.
I have Madbury on my chart as usually plus 300 Democratic. So that's still a normal, pretty good lead, Janet.
Our fingers crossed it stays that way.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I'll work together with anybody who wants to work together, and help other candidates who aren't even in our district. Just do what I can to help anybody, because we've got to take the House back. And I just hope that when we do, that we do it with moderation, so that we don't go overboard, as we have done occasionally in the past. And a lot's going to depend on who we vote for our leader, but that's not for us to figure out yet. So, again, I'm just looking forward to this whole time. I hope we can all make it, and I'm really looking forward to being able to work together with everyone. It's good to be a Democrat.
Well, that's a positive note, and I want to end with that. So is there anything else that anyone wants to say? I'm going to say only positive stuff at this point on. Anything that anybody wants to say to wrap up this very informative meeting?
I'll just say thank you for hosting this. It was really helpful. And it's really reassuring actually to hear Janet and Tom talk with the experience they've had. It would be nice to have people to help me mentor my way in, because it's a whole new experience for me.
And I want to say thank you, Amanda, for bringing us all together. As soon as I learned about this, I thought there's hope, because again, I run scared. And just thank you for being so caring and so committed. You're a great legislator. You're a great person. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're lovely. Thank you for saying such kind things. Yeah, Al, this is going to be an experience that you've never had before, and it's a lot of fun. It has its ups and downs, and it's rewarding. I say everybody should be a state rep at least once. You'll learn more about the state than you ever knew. And so the people that you will be on committee with and that you serve with are dedicated and love their job. There are people who are just incredible, and they're there for the right reasons. And there's a lot of people who are there for the wrong, but you kind of figure out who is who at the beginning, and you kind of run with the better group. So I will say you'll love it. And the campaign is very different than serving. It's like you have two very different characteristics, and they shouldn't go together, but they do. So with that said, we as the Lead Dems are here for you all. If you should need anything, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm very responsive with my emails, as you all probably already know, and I'm happy to help and get you the help that you need if you need anything. So thank you all for attending tonight, and have a great night and a great campaign season.
Thank you. It's so refreshing. Good night.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for coordinating this, Amanda. Really appreciate it.
No problem, my pleasure.
We sure do.
Good night.
Good
Night all.